Hello everybody, my name is Marcus and I'm a fibre artist from Scotland, and this video is just going to be a crafty Q&A video where I'll be answering some of the questions submitted by yourselves, and I'll be working on a little craft project whilst I go through those questions just to make it a bit more visually interesting. So what I'll be working on today is I will be doing some visible mending using a darning loom on some hand knit socks. I've got a little selection of socks here. All of these are at least 5 years old. And for them to get as far as 5 years and still being, for the most part, a cohesive piece of fabric, it's pretty amazing. When you think about like commercially made socks that you would just pick up at a shop, you'd kind of generally be lucky if they lasted 5 months, let alone 5 years. And some of these are definitely older than 5 years, but the youngest pair of socks, which is these, they're at the 5 year mark now, where some of them are a good bit older. So the way I will be mending them is using a darning loom, which these are pretty cool. I've been trying to get a hold of one of these for a few years now, but they're a bit like hen's teeth. I've never seen them in a local yarn shop. They've always been available on Amazon, but I kind of try to avoid buying things from Amazon if I can. And I wasn't in a desperate need for one of these, but I have been kind of looking out for one for a while. But Sistrena Grena, a kind of homeware lifestyle shop, they had them in stock, so I snatched one up, and it was actually the last one in the shop. So yeah, the questions I have today are a mixture of questions that have been submitted via YouTube, Instagram, and the NGL Not Gonna Lie thing that I posted. And we're going low tech today. I'm using my phone to record, so I've written everything down by hand. Well, not everything, but there was multiple questions about like the same kind of topic, so I'm going to kind of cover all aspects of them. I've kind of written the topics down and just hope I remember the individual questions. So let's get started. The sock I'm going to be working on today is this kind of dark colour. So I want contrast, like that's brilliant contrast. But I've already used the rainbow yarn for this sock, so I want to get something different. So the colour I've picked today is this kind of light grey, but it's got loads of really nice bright speckles through it. And I think will contrast nicely with this. So whilst I thread this up, let's start with a question. So, somebody asked what is my favourite texture to knit or crochet, and I thought I wasn't 100% sure on what they were meaning, to be honest. Like, there's a few different ways you could look at this question. You could be talking about the yarn, you could be talking about stitch patterns, so I figured I would just kind of try and cover off both if I can. So in terms of yarn, as much as I like, like soft luxury wools, like merino and silk and cashmere and all that goodness, my favourite type of yarn would have to be like a woolly wool, something that's got a little bit of crisp to it. I'm not so much into like itchy rustic wools, but I do like feeling that wool content that you don't really get with merino. Likes of mohair, I cannot touch mohair. That's a sensory nightmare for me. I feel the way mohair makes me feel is the same that chalk makes me feel. It's like, like goosebumps, shiver down my spine, hair standing on end. It's that just sort of, like, it's just something about that texture just does not work for me. People have recommended that I try Suri alpaca, which I haven't yet, but it has, aesthetically, it has a similar kind of effect to mohair, but I don't know if I'll get that same kind of texture issue that I get with mohair. That being said, I'm not too, like, like fluffy mohair garments aren't really what I want to wear anyway, so I'm not like, I don't feel like I'm missing out, essentially. So in terms of stitch pattern, I love baubles. I love to knit baubles. They're fun to make, but I love just running my hand down. Like, if you've got like a kind of densely packed section of baubles in a knitted item, I love that feeling. It's absolutely great. Okie doke. So another question is, what is your opinion on acrylic yarn as an indie dyer? And I thought that's an interesting one. I mean, specifically as an indie dyer, I don't dye acrylic. I can't dye acrylic. So I don't really have much of an opinion specifically as a dyer. But like as just like a maker, a consumer, I don't really use acrylic myself. I don't have any issue with people who do use acrylic. It's cheap, it's widely available, you can pick it up. You're hard pressed to find a yarn store that doesn't have any acrylic over here. But it's also, you can pick up in a supermarket, and it's generally really, really affordable, which is a good thing. When you're looking at luxury yarns, and if you're thinking about like making sweaters, if you're buying yarn that's like £20 plus a skein, making a sweater is going to get pretty expensive pretty quickly. And using like luxury hand-dyed yarn, whatever, if I was to make a sweater with that, that's a big purchase for me. That's not something I can do in a whim. I need to plan and kind of schedule my finances around making a purchase as large as that. So yeah, acrylic, absolutely. The reason I don't use it myself is I just don't enjoy it. It hurts my hands really quickly when I'm knitting with acrylic. If I'm crocheting with acrylic, it's absolutely fine. I don't really know why that is. I think it's because I learned to crochet before I learned to knit. And so when I was learning, I was like 13, 14. The only yarn that I had money for was acrylic, and that was the only yarn I could get a hold of. There's not really, in the city centre of Glasgow, there isn't really, well, at the time there wasn't really anywhere you could get yarn, other than one very small craft shop, which I'm pretty sure the only yarn they had was acrylic. Maybe had some acrylic blends, but that was kind of the predominant fibre. So I taught myself to crochet using acrylic. So I think the way I tension my yarn for crochet is, like, I've learned to tension my yarn taking into account that acrylic doesn't have stretch. I mean, there is some acrylic that has a little bit of stretch, but the fibre itself doesn't stretch. So I think the way I tension my yarn for crochet takes into account that there's going to be no stretch. Whereas when I started learning to knit, that was when I started to use natural fibres, mostly wool. So I think the way I taught myself to kind of hold my yarn and tension everything was based on there being a natural stretch in the yarn, which isn't the case with acrylic. So I think that's why. I don't know. I tend to use, if I'm not using wool, I tend to use cotton, which doesn't have stretch either, and I get the same issues with my hands when I'm knitting, but not for crochet. I don't understand. But, like, for example, of another reason why I don't use acrylic, well, it's not that I don't use acrylic, I don't really use acrylic that often. We got a puppy at the start of the year, and I wanted to make some toys for the dog to play with. So when I was thinking about what I was going to make, I knew that whatever I was making was going to be destroyed pretty quickly. So when I was sourcing yarn, straight away I was thinking, I don't want to use acrylic, because if I'm making something that's going to be broken, I want it to be as biodegradable as possible. So I went for some cotton, and there was some linen as well. I think it was a cotton linen blend. I can't really remember. It was mostly stuff I had lying around the house because I'm a hoarder. But yeah, and like the thought as well was, if the dog destroys it and swallows any of it, I would rather it be cotton or linen rather than them swallowing plastic yarn. But yeah, and even the stuffing that I used was some kind of waste alpaca fibre that I have from the fleeces. It was some of the fibre that I wasn't going to be spinning into yarn because it wouldn't make a good yarn. Yeah, so I used some of that to stuff it with, and right enough, the dog destroyed the toys within like 3 minutes each, and then started eating the fibre. So I'm glad I used something a bit more natural. So if they did manage to swallow any of it, it maybe won't be as bad as if they were eating plastic. I don't know. That's my thoughts on that one. So I have I've done the warp, which is the up and down threads. They're a little bit wonky, but it's fine. I don't think the loom is on straight anyway. It is what it is. So now I'm just getting ready to go across and do the warp going up. So we'll get another question. Oh, okay, so I had a few questions about this topic, which I was kind of glad that people asked, which I'll explain why I was glad. So somebody had asked, are you still dyeing yarn? Somebody had said, have you closed the business side of Fiberpunk? And somebody said, when is your next stripy yarn update going to be? And the reason I was glad that these questions had been asked is, just as a small producer, when you take time off, it's like it makes me pretty anxious when I take time off, especially when it's been extended time off like I have this year, because you just have that worry of, are people still going to be interested when you come back? You know, like I've spent years kind of building this up, and you know, obviously it's still quite small, but you know, there's still been a lot of time that's gone into this, and it's scary then kind of walking away from it for a period of time, because you just don't know who's going to be waiting for you when you come back. So getting these questions, it gave me a little bit of confidence that people are still interested in my yarn. So the reason I had to take a bit of a step back from the dyeing yarn was mostly just time issues. This year has been pretty challenging. And I mean, a lot of stuff started last year as well, but my free time has pretty much vanished. I don't have a lot of free time anymore. I never had loads, but the time that I did have has kind of gone. For a few different reasons, but you know, I have a family that need a lot of support, and like obviously getting a puppy as well, that's a lot of work. Especially if you get a Czech wolf dog. It's a hell of a lot of work. But yeah, so something had to give between like the day job, my family responsibilities, and other things that are going on. Something had to give, and sadly it was the thing that I enjoy most, which was dyeing yarn. Which, to say, I am still dyeing. As of this weekend, I have been dyeing anyway. I have had to take a break, but it's not forever. It's just been a temporary measure, which it's not, you know, the things that were getting in the way of me dyeing haven't gone away, but I've got some extra support with some of the things. It's just making things a little bit more manageable. So I don't know when I'll ever be able to do like a full-sized large shop update again. I don't see that happening in the immediate future, but I do have plans to do a small-ish update at the end of September. Well, towards the end of September. I haven't settled on a date yet. I kind of want to go for the 21st of September just because that's the equinox. Yeah, equinox. So yeah, you know, I'm aiming for that kind of time of year, and there's a special day around about that time of year. So I was thinking maybe the 21st, but again, this is going to kind of largely depend on the time I have available to me. Sorry. But the end of September leads you into October, which is also known as spooky season. So that kind of gives you maybe a little hint as to the kind of yarn that I'm dyeing just now. This summer's not been very summery, to be honest. It's rained and it's been cold, like to the point that I've considered putting the central heating on recently, and I'm like, it's August. But that kind of just makes me want to watch horror films, and I just want it to be Halloween already. So yeah, might be some Halloween yarn in the horizon. So, least favourite project. I should have brought this down because I gave this some thought. Somebody asked, like, what is my least favourite project that I've ever worked on? And straight away I was kind of like, like, I don't think I've ever made anything that I didn't like. I mean, I've made things that haven't worked out, but, you know, they've been more kind of like experiments that like haven't really worked out. So, you know, they didn't work, it's an experiment, that's kind of what it does. So I wasn't really factoring that into my thought process. But I do have a shawl that I made a number of years ago. I might actually just go and get it. That will be easier than talking about it. So this is my least favourite project I've ever worked on. It looks great. It really, really does. If I can try and show it. So it's like a lightning bolt. There we go, that's maybe a bit better. This is the, I think it's called a Voltage shawl by Sue Stratford. The pattern is fine. There's nothing wrong with the pattern. There's nothing wrong with the yarn. I quite like the yarn. I think it's really interesting. I don't really wear it just because it's, I don't know, like, it's a bit small. I don't know. It's not super... I like really, really big shawls. I like a neck blanket. The reason it's my least favourite is just... I didn't enjoy working on it. It was really, really dull. Which, yeah, I feel a bit mean saying that, but I didn't enjoy it. So the whole thing is intarsia. So you've got your kind of three colours, and it's kind of knit that way. So the whole thing is intarsia, and just the way the charts work, you were having to read every single row before you were doing it, which it just means it's not really relaxing to work on. It's very involved knitting, which is fine for short bursts, but kind of making a whole shawl where you're having to read, you know, every row as you go, and I made so many mistakes and I was having to rip out. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just I just didn't enjoy the process of making it. So if I had to pick a least favourite project, that would be it. Yeah, I feel a bit mean saying that, but it looks great. I just would never make another one. So back to my sock. So another question is, have you ever made dog stuff? Well, I actually got a few questions all around the dog. She isn't here just now to show you. Maybe later on. She's out for a walk with my partner just now. So the first question I got is, what is your dog's name? My dog's name is Juno, and that's not... She's not named after the Elliot Page film, but I do really enjoy the Elliot Page film. That's kind of a... You know, the film never really... When we were picking a name, the film Juno never really came into my mind at all. But then, you know, after we named her and I started kind of telling people what her name was, every single person I said, like, oh, we've called her Juno, was like, oh, after the film. So, yeah, no, she's called Juno. Another question I got was, what kind of dog is she? We do get that question kind of when we take her anywhere. So she's a Czechoslovakian wolf dog, which basically means she's a German Shepherd with a little bit of wolf blood in her. Yeah, and she's pretty mental. A lot of people asked how she is. She's wild. Our biggest challenge just now is just trying to get her enough exercise and try and tire her out. I'm limited in the sort of exercise I can give her because I do not drive. So, for example, like if I walk her around the kind of area that we live, you know, maybe half an hour, like I'll do it like before I start working, when I'm working from home or whatever. And for first thing in the morning, that's fine. But like, you know, that's not gonna... She needs a lot more exercise than that. I sometimes take her, there's a park near me. It's a good sized park and it's kind of all wooded area and you're upstairs and all this kind of stuff. So when I take her there, we'll maybe be out for an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. And that just, it doesn't dent her energy levels whatsoever, which is really challenging because that dents my energy levels severely. So it's my partner, they take her, when he takes her off for a walk, and obviously sometimes it's together, but when he's taking her for a walk, it's to like a big open field that there's nobody else goes to. It's an old golf course. It's not been used for like at least a decade. You very, very, very rarely see other people there. So he'll, when we take her there, we take her off the lead and she's running wild. So we'll be out for 2 hours and we'll be walking for 2 hours, but she will be running for 2 hours backwards and forwards, chasing a ball. And that really tires her out. But that's not super practical to do every single day, especially when, you know, there's several days throughout the week where I'm the only person dealing with her and I physically can't take her there. And there isn't anywhere safe that I could take her, and I would feel comfortable having her off lead, because all the places that I have access to, they're busy. You know, there's other people there with dogs, and yeah, I just wouldn't feel comfortable or secure taking her off lead and letting her run around in that kind of environment. She's still very young. Her recall is getting better, but I just don't... I'd rather not put myself in a situation where she could get either hurt herself or, you know, hurt another dog. She's not aggressive in the slightest, but yeah, she's... Considering she still is, you know, a puppy, she's very big, and I don't think she kind of... It's more so her paws. She doesn't realise how heavy-handed she is with them. So yeah, that's kind of the biggest challenge just now. But apart from that, she's doing really well. She's getting better. She's still kind of doing that whole puppy nibbling thing, which is... yeah, it's getting old, but it is improving as well. She's, yeah, considering her age, she is doing very, very well. So have I ever made anything for her? So I kind of touched on this earlier. I made her some toys when we first got her. They were mostly crocheted, just because it's easier to get like a really dense fabric with crochet that I thought might outlast her teeth. I knew they were going to get broken, but I thought, maybe, she'll maybe get a couple days out of it, but every single item I made her lasted under 3 minutes. So since then I've not really made her anything. I do like the idea of like making like stuff other than toys, like making accessories for her. I don't know how compliant she would be with wearing the accessories. I would love to get her to wear some things that I make at some point. Like I have all these like ideas for Halloween costumes for her that I think would be absolutely hysterical. Like I want to dress her up like a grandma for like that kind of Red Riding Hood vibe. But I also thought it'd be really funny. It would be a lot easier as well if like me and Alistair were to dress up as little pigs and she could be the big bad wolf. Because then she wouldn't need to dress up because she is the big bad wolf. But yeah, that's a work in progress. One day she'll be compliant to my whims, but that day is not today. So the next question is, how did I get into fibre art? Which is an excellent question. So my mother, when me and my sister were kids, we were always doing different crafty things. My mum's, she doesn't really do any like formal craft hobbies anymore, but she loves like a DIY project. She's always doing something. But so in like when we were kids, we used to come to Scotland on holiday and stay with my grandmother. And my grandmother, she's been a lifelong knitter. She crochets as well, but well, she used to. But she just kind of used to make crocheted blankets, kind of like a granny blanket, a granny stitch. Yeah, she just basically used to make a giant granny square. But so when we used to come to Scotland on holiday, she would get me and my sister crocheting or whatever. I could never really pick it up because I was quite young. All I could ever do was a crochet chain. So I used to make crochet chain belts for my action men. But yeah, my grandmother doesn't really knit or crochet anymore. She does have Alzheimer's dementia, so it's just she wouldn't know. She wouldn't understand how to do it anymore. She had a huge stash of yarns, supplies, and patterns because she used to work in a yarn store years and years and years ago. And when the yarn store closed, she basically got like bin bags full of yarn and needles and patterns. But yeah, she just decided she wasn't doing it anymore, so she just got rid of all of it. And then it was a few years after that she took the notion to start knitting again. So she like bought yarn, some patterns and some needles, and she just never really took to it. She'd kind of forgotten how to do it, and I think this was kind of the early days of the dementia starting to take effect. But so a lot of the knitting I got from her. She did try to teach me how to knit, but she's left-handed, but she knits right-handed. So when she was trying to explain it to me, it was just far too confusing because she's doing everything right-handed but back to front, and it never really sunk in. But she gave me some books and some like yarn and stuff. So that was kind of how I got into that side of things. I started crocheting when I was 13, and then I taught myself to knit when I was 16. The thing I don't get is when I taught myself to crochet at 13, I done that through YouTube videos. So I was watching other people teaching me. But when I started knitting, it didn't occur to me to go to YouTube for that. My granny gave me a book that she got when she was in school, so a long time ago. There wasn't really any pictures in the books. There was some diagrams of like the finished objects, but there was no, for the sections where it's talking about how to knit. There wasn't really any diagrams on like how to like hold needles or tension yarn or anything like that. So I kind of taught myself in the way that seemed easiest, and using what I'd learned from crochet and the people who taught me to crochet via YouTube. So I ended up knitting, I think it's continental. So I don't throw my yarn, I tension my yarn with my left hand, and kind of pick the yarn with my right hand. Yeah, and I found out after a few years that I was doing my knit stitches wrong. I was twisting them all the time. But that's kind of a consequence of kind of going in blind with knitting and not really having anyone to say, no, that's wrong. Like, because my grandmother, she used to look at my knitting, but she never flagged that I was twisting my knit stitches, but her vision's like not great, or she was just being nice. So that was how I got started with crochet and knitting. When I was 19, I asked my partner to buy a drop spindle for my 19th birthday. So my birthday is in April, and by the June I had a spinning wheel. I really enjoyed the drop spindle. That was kind of I wanted to dip my toes in the water and see if I liked spinning like at all, and straight away I was like, this is so much fun, I really enjoy this. So I ended up with a spinning wheel within like 2 months. And then it was through the spinning that I got into dyeing, because I was buying mostly like undyed wool to spin, and then I started dyeing with like food colouring and stuff like that. And that kind of, it kind of grew organically. And then it was with like the hand spun yarn, that was when I wanted to start weaving, because I wanted to show off the texture of, especially like the art yarn that I was spinning. So yeah, it's been a pretty organic kind of progression from crocheting with, just materials I found in the house, to then dedicating your whole life to creating supplies for other people and hoarding supplies for myself. Yeah, so that's basically how I got into fibre art. Just now I've done all of the warp threads I've woven in all of the weft, so I've used up all of the warp, so now I'm just tacking down the very top to adhere this patch to the sock. And I've got one question left. So that question is, how does it feel to be a male knitter / crocheter? Which is interesting. So, when I was younger and I was like knitting and crocheting, like it was a big kind of novelty, because like I was in school and like for my higher art projects I was doing like knitted pieces, and so like I was spending art class knitting. People just found it like quite amusing that I was a guy knitting, but as once I kind of started getting more involved with like the kind of fibre arts community, so when I the first event I ever went to, which was back in maybe 2015, 2016, I can't really remember, it was like a fibre festival, and to be honest, I didn't have a great time. It was quite clear to me that I wasn't the expected demographic. So like a lot of the vendors, like I was having trouble like trying to buy stuff from vendors, because they were just kind of like disregarded me. I think they were like assuming that I was with somebody else who was like into the fibre arts, and like it wasn't me. And like I don't know. I definitely felt like an anomaly. And not to say like it wasn't everyone at the event, but there was like a few stalls that were kind of like, "What do you want? Like, why are you here?" But like, you know, to flash forward to now, it's such a different environment. When I go to events, I do not feel like an anomaly. I'm still in the minority, but um, I just people don't find it as much of a novelty to see a guy in the fibre art space nowadays, which is great. Um, and I think when I started dyeing yarn, I think initially people were kind of interested in my yarn as a novelty, that it was a guy that was making the yarn, which I don't know. I don't want to be a novelty. Yeah, I don't know. I've had at in-person events, I've had comments before, like, you know, like I once got asked, "Oh, like, is it your wife that does the yarn?" And I'm like, "Honey, there's no wife. It's just me." And like, kind of people making assumptions that like I don't think that's ever going to go away. But it's such a hugely different space now to what it was when I first kind of started going out in the wild. But that being said, I I think kind of one of the things that makes the fibre arts community as kind of loving and welcoming as it is that it's female dominated. My first ever fibre festival was the Perth Festival of Yarn, maybe 2019. Yeah, I think it was 2019. It was the day before the festival. I had like a lot of things go wrong. I couldn't get any yarn labels. Just I had a bit of a disaster, and most of it was just poor planning and leaving things till the last minute. So I'd stayed up the night before trying to do everything by hand. Wasn't really making any progress with it. So on the Saturday, the first day of the actual festival, you know, I got to the venue, got to my stall, and started kind of getting things set up. And straight away, I had like 3 or 4 people, like other vendors at the event, come up to me who'd seen, like I'd posted on my Instagram stories that I was having a bit of a disaster. And these people came up and said, "What can I do to help?" Like some person had, it was actually Helen of Giddy Yarns. She had like little labels that I could have used. Kirsty of Grenade Creations came over and helped me write out like yarn tags. And I think if this was like a male dominated space, that would not be the attitude of other people. There really was like this kind of aspect of community and like colleagues over competitors. Like yeah. And as I said, I think if this was like a male, like a largely male dominated space, I do not think that would be possible. For people to be that supportive and loving, and like I didn't really know these people. Like, I mean, Kirsty's a friend, but you know the other people who were supporting and like helping me out and asking like what they can do to help. I didn't really know them before. Like we knew each other like just from Instagram or whatever, like we knew who each other were, but straight away, like, you know, they seen somebody needed help, so they were like, "What can I do to help?" I just, yeah, it's a great kind of space to be in my experience anyway. But you know, it's not perfect. Nothing is perfect, but I think that kind of like largely female demographic really helps shape the community to be better. But yeah, so I have I finished tacking this down. I'm just going to take this apart if I can. I always find this part quite difficult, like actually removing the hooks. Oh, okay. That's a lot easier than I usually find it. And we have a finished patch. It's not the brightest, most high contrast, but the speckles that you get going through are really quite fun. The tension's a little bit weird, but once I kind of massage it out, and I'll probably stick these in a wash again, just to even that out a bit. Yeah. So that's all the questions I have, and I finished my patch. I thought I would get multiple patches done, but turns out talking and doing things at the same time are a challenge for me. So yeah, with that, I'm gonna leave it. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. A little bit different to what I usually do, but I thought it might be nice to switch things up a little bit. But until next time, bye bye.